a presentar a nuestro siguiente speaker. Es Ivica, espero que lo haya pronunciado bien. Está ubicado en Ámsterdam. Al final es un apasionado sobre todo de Python, de AWS y de infraestructura como código, ahí por lo que le he podido cotillear. Y nos va a contar sobre Solving Data Governance Problems with Airflow y con AWS ECS Anywhere.
Working? You hear me? Hola, hola, hola. That's what everyone has been saying this morning. I don't speak Spanish, but hola, hola, I understand. That one I do understand. Okay, I will need just a few minutes, of course, as always. Good. You have your phones with you, right? Okay, it's not a robbery, but I need your phones. If you can scan this, you can pose your questions over there so I can answer them in the end if you are maybe too shy to pick up a microphone and ask. And there's also going to be some Q&A later on. Oh, I still see people scanning. Thank you. Let's start with some stretching. I think we have all been sitting down all day, I especially. Do we have any data engineers in the house? Please raise your hand. I'm not a data engineer, but I don't want you to be alone with your hand up. Do we have people that are just working with data daily, like transforming it and moving it from one place to the other? Okay, just a few. Good. I hope I'm not going to be too boring to you today. I'm very proud to be here on the first AWS Community Day in Spain, here in Barcelona. So far, loving the city, loving the event. But let's talk about data. Did you hear the data is the new oil? Kind of, yeah? Did you also hear the data is the new gold? Kind of, okay. Well, I definitely heard both of those, and I'm not even a data engineer, but I do agree with these statements. And talking about ETL, the E in ETL stands for extracting. It means extracting that gold or that oil or that value from something. And if we talk about extracting oil, it's really hard work. You need to know where the oil is, and then you need a permit to dig. It's not just, a shovel and a bucket of oil. It doesn't work like that. But knowing where to dig is just half of the story, because the permit, again, is not so easy to get, and if you do get it, it can be wrong. How can a permit be wrong? Well, maybe the person giving you the permit was just a little bit drunk. This is non-alcoholic, by the way. And they give you a permit, and the permit says, yes, you may dig for oil and you may dig for gold, but you have to be careful because dragons are guarding gold, and also you have to do it from your own home. You cannot go to the mountain, you cannot go to the dragon, you need to do it from your home. Okay, let's try. But talking about home, my professional home is one of the biggest fashion e-commerce companies that you probably never heard of. And it's called Bestseller. And by the way, we are not the best at selling. We just have a cool name and a cool domain. But walking around the streets of Barcelona, I saw people dressed very nicely. So you must have heard about some of our brands, such as Jack & Jones or Vero Moda, or all the bazillion ones that you can see on the screen. And what I do at Bestseller is lead the data platform team. And what the data platform team does is essentially provide the infrastructure for all the other teams like data analysts and business stakeholders so that they can analyze the data, they can access it, they can get value from this data so that they can make critical decisions. And one of the critical decisions, and I know you may laugh at this, is if I want to sell this shirt as a merchandiser, as a buyer, how many of these do I buy? When do I display them on the website? Who do I display them to? How does the weather affect our buyers' choices? And by the way, all of these questions, you as a buyer, as a business stakeholder, you need to answer them 9 months in advance, because that's how you prepare. You don't buy today for tomorrow. You buy for the 3 seasons ahead. That's one of the challenges that we are facing. And of course, there are other challenges. And the challenge that I want to be talking to you about today is, how do you solve data governance and data residency problems, which in and of itself is not a technical problem, but we are a technical team and we were tasked with solving this. And the scenario itself is going to cover tools such as Airflow and AWS ECS. And I will try to show you how these two seemingly unrelated technologies can be used together to solve something that is very real. But to solve the problem, we need to understand the problem. What is this data residency that I keep saying? I'm not a native English speaker, you probably can hear it. But so I opened up a dictionary, and residency is defined as the place where something lives, where it resides. And if we talk about data, the data lives somewhere on hard drives, on SSDs, but it lives in a physical location, in your basement, in a data center, somewhere in the cloud, but it physically exists somewhere. The second term is governance. And I kept thinking, what is governance? I mean, I heard the word, but it's so difficult for me to define. And then I started looking, and of course, I took myself as an example. I am a resident of the Netherlands, so I reside there. But I pay taxes there, and I'm allowed to live there because I pay taxes. And there are laws regarding that. So that is governance. The set of laws, the set of structures that you use to govern a society or a company or anything in between. Okay, we get this. Enough of the dictionary. Let's talk about the problem. How can we turn the sentence, Acme, one of the companies that I'm using in this example, acquired a competitor in the US, into Acme acquired a competitor in the US, and now they have a problem paying Christmas bonuses. And it's not a money issue, don't get me wrong, they have lots of money. But they still cannot pay Christmas bonuses. And I know we all like Christmas bonuses, right? Of course. But in the world of big fish acquires smaller fish, our own big fish called Acme acquired a competitor from the US called Cyberdyne Systems, and there's nothing wrong with that. It happens every day. Just a few days ago, Cisco said, we're just going to go buy Splunk, 28 billion. That's fine. It's okay. We can do it. But if we consider that these two companies are located in two different regions of the world, that's when things start to get a little bit nasty, because different governments, different laws, different governing bodies. We absolutely know that there is valuable data hosted somewhere in the US. And the leadership team from Acme would love nothing more than to get their hands on this valuable business data. But they cannot. That is because they have their ETL processes hosted somewhere in the EU on a public cloud. And technically, yes, you can connect and you can read this data, but the law says, no, you cannot, because data of US citizens is protected by various laws in the US. That is the non-technical problem that I was speaking of. Technically, yes, we can connect, but we must not. So how do you go about this? And architecturally, we are in this situation. As I said, we have Acme that is on the top. They are running all of their workloads somewhere in the EU, including their ETL processes. And Cyberdyne, they have multiple offices in somewhere in the US. They also have data centers there with, as I said, valuable data. And this is where I need your help. If you pick up your phone, you get to answer this for me. You get to help me create this presentation.
Sí, sí.
Who wants to cry? 62% of you, okay. I was there, I'm not gonna lie. Overwhelmingly cry in a corner. No, it's not that difficult, come on. It really isn't. I know you're just doing it for laughs. I know, just snapping pictures with me, crying, everything. Okay, enough fun. Enough fun. I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding. But as we all know, all of the solutions that are offered here have their pros and cons, and it's all about trade-offs every day. You know how they say, architects always say, it depends? Well, they do say it for a reason. Because running a site-to-site VPN is technically not so difficult in the best case scenario. But in the worst case scenario, you need to have a redundant tunnel. You need to keep the connection active. We are talking about 2 different time zones or maybe multiple different time zones if you have multiple locations. So do you need people on call 24/7 in all of those locations? How do you deal with this complexity? Because it can spiral out of control. For those of you that said, let's run a ETL tool per location, yes, it's the easier way. Because it's easy, super easy to run tools such as Airflow or any other ETL tool with Docker. You just spin it up, connect it to a database, and voila, it works. But what if you have 25 locations? What if you have 200 locations? How do you manage access to each one of these tools? Yeah, I know about infra as code, but people and access, Azure ADs and all of the difficult stuff, it is difficult. How do you reconcile logs? You have one job running in, I don't know, Amsterdam, another one running in Bogota, Colombia. One of them fails, so how do you reconcile these logs with different time zones and with different everything? I know it becomes a mess. I've been there. Maybe it is just easier to just cry in a corner, and I fully much agree with you people. But do you know who didn't cry in a corner? Those people that were selling shovels during a gold rush. And if you remember, we are now in a gold rush and we need shovels immediately. So the 2 shovels that I want to talk to you about today are AWS ECS and Apache Airflow. Do we have any ECS users in the room? Nice one. Do we have happy ECS users in the room? Okay, almost the same people. It's not perfect, right? But it gets the job done. What about Airflow? Okay, I expect questions from you. Cool. Then I won't spend too much time on ECS because half of the room knows it. Long story short, it is a container management platform, and what it does for you as a person or for your company is it allows you to run, to scale, and to manage your container workloads. And its its biggest power, in my opinion, is the integration in the AWS ecosystem. If you need to change permissions, it's of course IAM. All the network settings are done in your typical VPC, so if you are not using ECS, it's easy to start using it because you already know half of the story. And we at Bestseller, we use ECS every day, all the time, for critical services that are running 24/7, but also for just one-off things, one-off tasks that are still important, but you can wait on them. They can run during the night. They can maybe fail once, and then you can just retry them or whatnot. Typically, the things that don't make us money, and we are in e-com, so being down for a minute means money lost. Being down for a day means business lost. You're never going to see that customer again. That's how picky e-com customers are. But what is difficult with ECS, and especially with these one-off tasks, is how do you orchestrate them? How do you make them work together? And that's where Airflow comes in. And Airflow is like this experienced gray person in the middle, being the conductor, being the orchestrator, being someone that tells, now you, and now you, and now you louder. That's what Airflow does. It orchestrates and it manages dependencies between jobs, tasks, however you want to call them. It creates workflows. And the beauty of Airflow is that you do all of this through code. You version it, you version control it, you do pull requests, you can roll back, you can do all the nice things that Git has blessed us with. And you do it with Python. Python lovers, anyone? Yes, thank you. Drinks on me. Cool. Pizza, right? I like it. I think we all understand how pizza is made. You get some toppings, you get the base, put the toppings on the base, bake it. But there are inherent dependencies between this. So your partner can make the dough, can make the base, you can make the toppings, and you can do this in parallel. But you cannot put the toppings if the base is not ready. And you cannot bake the thing if both of those, the toppings and the base, are not ready yet. And that is what Airflow is going to help us with. And if we think of this process in terms of workflows and dependencies and tasks, we can imagine it like this. We can have one tag that is a workflow for preparing toppings. Another one could be for preparing the dough, and then in the end, you make it, you bake it, you enjoy your pizza. And of course, different teams can do all of these different things. They can do them in parallel, and they can do them sequentially. And being an open source tool with huge companies behind it, I know AWS is actively committing to Airflow, Adobe, Adyen, Airbnb, LinkedIn. If they exist, they are probably committing to Airflow. That's how big the project is. It has more than 25,000 stars on GitHub. And because so many companies and so many people are contributing, Airflow comes with batteries included. And one of the batteries that helps us make workflows is something that they call an operator. So what does an operator do? Well, it operates. It definitely operates. You don't need to know how to connect to Redshift. You don't need to know how to run a query on Redshift. All you need to do is use the Redshift SQL operator and give it a query, and then it does the heavy lifting for you. That's what operators do. They help you do the heavy lifting. And the two features from ECS and from Airflow that can make them work together is, from the ECS side, there is a feature called ECS Anywhere that essentially allows you to run your containers on the existing infrastructure, even on Raspberry Pis. So you could have your own data center with a whole bunch of machines that you bought, and you can use AWS ECS to run containers on that data center. And when it comes to Airflow, it does have a AWS ECS operator with which you can run containers using Airflow. And then we are going to marry them. That's the talk from today. So the Airflow ECS operator looks like this. You can essentially tell it, here is my cluster, here is my task definition, go run this. And with this, Airflow is no longer a task executor. It is now an orchestrator because it delegates the execution to ECS. If we were to marry them, this is the final solution architecture, and I know this is a bit big, so let's just go through it step by step. The existing container ecosystem that they had looks like this. They are running their own applications. There's the registry, the control plane, all the good stuff. The ETL tool runs on its own, has access to its own data lake, but now Big Fish bought the small fish, and now we have this office in New York or a data center in New York that we need to use, and that's where valuable data is. And we also have a location in San Francisco. So how do we connect all of this together? How do we enable the ETL from EU to work on data on the US? Demo gods are not always good to me, so what I did is made screenshots, and I hope you will believe me and trust me. I did make them a long time ago. But in an essence, there's going to be 4 steps today. Let's look at these ETL scripts. I don't know if this is visible, I hope. Super simple ETL script, reads the data from somewhere, does some calculations, and uploads the results back to an S3 bucket. We also have the tax calculation ETL script, which again, same thing. Read data, calculate something, upload back to S3. So running these ETL scripts alone, because they are the basis of our workflow, we need to run them alone, and if I do run them on their own and verify they work, they actually do work. We can see the resulting file uploaded. The same goes for another script, because there's two of them. How do we use this with ECS? Well, of course, they need to be containerized. A simple Docker file, Docker build, Docker push, ECR, just purrs as a kitten, it just works. And then to simulate these multiple locations, EU, US, I created 2 virtual machines on my laptop using Vagrant. That's the part in blue that you see here. And the part in, what's the color? Orange. That's the infrastructure running in AWS. And if you remember this ECS Everywhere feature that I was talking about, well, this is how it looks like when you add external machines. So I added these 2 virtual machines that I have to ECS, and now it can use them to run containers. If I want to run a container on these machines, I would simply say, use the cluster called cluster, and use the launch type that is now external. This is something specific to ECS. And then simply looking at the logs, or the logs that the ETL script is running, we can see that it ran on one of the machines. There's 2 of them, right? But what would happen if I run the same thing again? Because we have 2 external machines. Is the task going to run on one of them, on both of them? What's going to happen? Any guesses? Would it run on the same machine? Would it run on a different machine? Yeah, both is correct. Round robin, you can guess on which one is going to run, but there's a 50% chance that it's going to run on the machine that you don't want it to run on. And the problem with these machines, and this is, by the way, if I ran it again, it does run on a different one. The machines are not wrong. It's the access to data that these machines have, because the bonus machine has access to employee salaries, but the tax machine has access to office data, tax reports and whatnot. So how do we make this happen? How do we ensure that the correct ETL script is running on the correct machine? Well, for this we can use something that ECS has built in, which is called task placement constraints. You can basically tell ECS, hey, you know what? For this container that I have, I want to run it on machines that have GPU access. And you can use special labels for that. But the real power comes from having access to custom task placement constraints. You can put custom attributes on your containers and on your hosts, and you can match them using these attributes. Here's how it looks like. So I have tagged one of the machines with the value of bonus, and I tagged a different machine with the value of tax. And now when the tasks are being ran, we can use the placement constraints feature, and we can say, please use the machine whose purpose is bonus. Thank you. The time is running out. With this, what we can have is we can have proper scheduling. And the next step is now to put it in Airflow using its own language. Super simple. We use our trusted friend. We use it in pretty similar way, saying this is the cluster. Please use the external launch type, and please use the hosts that are tagged with bonus. And with this, the thing runs. We get a success and the exit code of 0. And just to recap, what has happened just now? Airflow ran a DAG in the EU. The DAG itself started on ECS. Then ECS scheduled it somewhere in the US, because that's That's where the machines are, that's where the data is. The ETL script ran, and it uploaded just the resulting data set back to EU. So there was no personally identifiable information. This one is always difficult. And that's why the data of US citizens was never copied, just the results, just the numbers. And to recap, ETL is there to stay. ECS is amazing, but please use it where it fits. And even 10 years later, after being officially published, containers are still boosters for every technology. I want to leave you with this. Thank you very much. My time ran out.
Any questions? Martin, you're incredible.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. That was very insightful. So yeah, what I did or doing with one of my clients, I'm setting up with CDK Terraform actually ECS with Airflow, but not the managed one actually. So configuring like everything by myself. We did this because to that time Airflow was a bit behind the managed one, so but we wanted some new features. So that was a bit because I prefer using the managed anyway. And we are extracting some Salesforce data out and storing it in Aurora Postgres kind of ish and transforming it as well. So I was a little bit confused. So because I don't have too much experience with the managed Airflow, so you need to set up there like ECS containers as well and everything. But because I thought that you might be not need to do that because it's the managed one, or
You don't have to. No,
yeah.
it will run. So the way we set it up is using Fargate as a backend.
Yeah.
But you can also just give it workflows and it will run it on its own. There are workers in the background. So
Yeah,
AWS is just running Airflow for you and
Yeah.
does the scaling and the SQS and everything for you.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, because we had data in the US that we couldn't really get to, we had to run our own containers there where the data is located. And that's why we had to use the ECS Anywhere feature. And then specifically for these workflows that were touching this data in the US, we were using the external machines.
So but you are still using the managed Airflow.
Yes,
Okay.
99.9 workflows.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's it. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. I always get this. I love step functions, by the way, one of my favorite services. But what Airflow has, and please remember, this is a 5 or 6 year old project. There's so much work done for you already. All the things that you can imagine and the things that you can't imagine, they have a connector for. And with step functions, what you get is a step machine, right? But it's pretty bare bones. So you still have to write your own transformational logic. You still have to write your own code to connect to S3. You have to handle errors. You have to do all the heavy lifting. But Airflow already has it built in, so that's why we use it, because it's specifically purposely built for that. And why this? I assume the question is why the whole setup? Well, as I said, this data in the US, it is forbidden. You cannot touch it because it has US citizen data on it. So you have to read it from machines located in the US. You cannot touch it from outside of US. And we solve this by marrying Airflow and ECS Anywhere. Please.
We are run out of time. We need to move. Sadly. Very short question.
So, so no, because we said because Airflow is now a pretty much good standard for ETL, so that was our choice why we wanted to use Airflow. So as you said, it's developed over years and becomes a really industrial standard to do this kind of stuff.
That's true. Thank you again.
Thank you.